So I want to start today with what's really fundamentally an infrastructure story, but also a story about how we often sort of miss the forest for the trees, or we end up wrapped up in a detail when the bigger story is really the big picture. Many of you might have heard about this bridge collapse that took place in Pittsburgh. And because of the timing of a Joe Biden trip to Pennsylvania, it immediately became very, very political. We're even going to look at a clip on Fox News of a couple of anchors there talking about the collapse and Joe Biden's infrastructure bill and just getting just about every single fact wrong. But before we get to that, I think it's important to remind you guys that when we talk about infrastructure and the fact that the U.S. is woefully behind on infrastructure spending, that infrastructure spending, which in many countries is not political, in the U.S. is so politicized and partisan that we have hundreds of bridges with the exact same rating as the Pittsburgh bridge that collapsed. And yet we only talk about the issue in real serious terms when a bridge actually collapses. When we have debates about infrastructure, it is mentioned in passing. Hey, we have many bridges that need to be repaired, brought back, modernized, etc. But it's almost like it doesn't really exist until there's a bridge collapse. And case in point, there's a very good article on NewJersey.com, NJ.com, which points out nearly 500 New Jersey bridges received the same poor rating as the one that collapsed in Pittsburgh. And this is for New Jersey, and it has a map so you can see which are nearby. But it points out on the FHWA's National Bridge Inventory for 2021, 482 Garden State bridges received a grade of poor. That's the same rating as the bridge in Pittsburgh's Frick Park that collapsed on Friday morning, injuring 10 people. States, federal agencies, and tribal governments submit data to the bridge inventory on an annual basis. About 7% of Jersey bridges have that poor grade. 27% are good, which is the highest rating, and the rest are somewhere in between. Each bridge receives ratings on its deck, superstructure, substructure, and culvert, et cetera, et cetera. So also important is that many of these are railway bridges over which trains are transiting. So obviously, most of these bridges rated poor are not going to collapse. I saw a comment from a bridge engineer who has explained that also you can't always tell by looking at a bridge which category it's in, that there's lots of bridges that look very bad cosmetically, but structurally are actually in that category good, even though if you or I looked at it, we would say that that's an absolute disaster. But there are lots of these bridges with the exact same rating, actual structural rating, as the Pittsburgh bridge that collapsed. Now, of course, it probably won't collapse when you or I or any one vehicle goes over it. Usually it doesn't happen, but it reminds us that we have a primarily reactive economy in the United States, and this is different than in many other countries. There's countries where you find this, but there's many European countries that have a different approach. In the US, certainly among the right, sometimes on the left as well, spending money before there's a problem is seen as imprudent. It's seen as a waste of money. And often the money doesn't get spent until something falls down or somebody dies first. It's similar in healthcare. Why make insurance companies cover all of this optional preventive stuff? Treat sick people. Well, no, but that's the whole point. The optional preventive stuff keeps people healthier on average, and it avoids some of that big spending later. Half the country, at least in terms of the political reality, just doesn't accept that. Whether they believe it or not, they don't accept it as a way to actually do politics. And it's the exact same principle here when it comes to these bridges, but bigger picture with infrastructure spending overall, which is when you look at that list. And remember, when we just had the debate over infrastructure, you look at that list and so many on the right and some on the left look at that list and they go, this stuff, it's not really infrastructure spending. How is it infrastructure spending where we are reacting to a particular storm by saying we're going to bring all of this stuff up to new code? That's not really recovery. That's something, these are pet projects. No, it's the same principle as with healthcare. And even with this, it took this one bridge collapse to get people thinking in slightly different terms about these things. But looking just at New Jersey, and you have 500 bridges with the exact same rating. And hopefully it doesn't happen frequently, but it's just a matter of time until it happens again. A great way to support the David Pakman Show is by supporting our sponsors. Today, one of our sponsors is Sheath Underwear, the only men's underwear that once and for all ends the sticking and the chafing and the readjusting that traditional underwear causes. Sheath creates ergonomic boxer briefs designed to keep everything separate, dry, cool, and comfortable. If you've only worn traditional underwear, give Sheath a try. It's a level of comfort you probably didn't even know was possible because it prevents skin-on-skin contact. This is the future of underwear. Stop wearing uncomfortable underwear that mashes and constricts. Wear Sheath to keep yourself comfortable and sweat-free. The amazing reviews online speak for themselves. People love Sheath underwear. It's excellent. And Sheath is giving my audience 20% off when you go to sheathunderwear.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman. The link is down below.